friend on Facebook asked this question when they saw this Facebook profile go up, which is a Photoshop piece that I worked on, and I called it The Missing Piece. So check this out. As you can see, there was a question that was asked: who is this Viking with the black tights? And that's the question that I'd like to answer, and I'm going to elaborate on that answer a bit, and I'm going to break these videos into two parts. First part is, well, first of all, this story comes from the Bible in the book of Daniel, and the particular chapter it comes from is Daniel 2. Now, my suggestion is, if you haven't read that story before, then I suggest you pause this video now and go read it first, so the rest of this video will make sense. Okay, cool. So, the first part, I'm going to talk about this chapter from a story point of view, allegorical and also life application principles, because these, to me personally, are the highlights that really stand out for me. And the first part is the very beginning, when the king wakes up and he asks all his wise men, who are probably the highest paid people on his payroll, and he asks them, listen, I just had a really impressive dream. It's left an imprint on my mind, and I need you to tell me what the dream is and also interpret it. Now, anybody with any logic in modern times and even in past times would know that that's an impossible request. No one comes to somebody and says, tell me your dream, because we're not mind readers, we can't read what's going on in your head. And these are smart people, these astrologers, enchanters, and magicians and whatnot that are all in this array of wise people, they're unable to give the answer. They've been advisors, they're paid as advisors to the king, and they can't give an answer. They're probably looking dumbfounded and thinking, no, you tell us the dream first, and then we'll tell you what it means. And they're not getting that answer. And then they actually make an admission. If you look at verse 10 and 11, they say, King, there's no other king on this earth in the past, even present, that has had made such a request. There's no one but the gods that can answer this. What you ask is impossible, and there are no gods amongst humans. Now, I love that admission in verse 10 and 11. Take note of that admission. And this statement, I don't know who made that statement. They must have called the highest ranking officer to make that call, because that actually fuels a reaction from the king, and he says, well, if you can't answer it, I'm going to kill you all. So he doesn't say, I'm going to sack you, I'm going to cut your pay, I'm going to bring it down. He says, I'm going to kill you all, and I'll make all your houses like piles of dung. That's harsh, man. And so all these wise men and all these guys on the payroll have now got their lives at stake because they were unable to answer this request. And King Nebuchadnezzar is probably thinking, man, I tax all my people, you get such a high percentage, and you can't even fulfill what I pay you for. So that's the first part. And why I like that is because it really exposes and reveals our human limitations as far as logic is concerned. You see, because when we come to work with our logic, we need material to start with. We need something in front of us in order to make conclusions, or in order to build it from. We need foundations to build it from. We don't work from nothing. We need something to work with. Anything beyond that is faith. And that's why I love this particular part of the story. The second part of the story I like is when the message is sent around that all the wise men are going to be killed. There was one man in particular, one young man in particular, who was a captive, and he was part of the wise man group as well. Probably not the highest payroll because he's not in the court, obviously. And he catches wind of this because one of the soldiers come and they say, listen, there's been a decree, everyone's going to die, including you guys, unfortunately. And he's a captive from the Hebrews. He's a captive from the nation of Israel. And in history, you'll learn the nation of Israel is actually the chosen nation of God. And this is where this young man named Daniel is a captive from. And he asked Arioch, he asked the soldier, he says, why is there a death decree? And Arioch is happy to explain this to Daniel, because he's got quite a reputation. If you backtrack and read Daniel 1, you'll see that he's already established a reputation, him and his 3 friends. And this is the part of the story I really like, because what happens here is Daniel's questioning and thinking, well, he knows he has a reason why he's a captive of Babylon. Not the happiest life to be in. But what he does next, he goes to his three friends, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, and he says to them, listen, the king has made this decree. And the Bible says that they got together and they prayed. They got together and they prayed, like calm, cool, collective, no need to panic. There's a huge contrast to what we discussed in my first point, like these guys are not sure what to do and whatever. This direction here is to pray. And why I love this part of where they're praying is because when you think about it, these days and the time that we're living in, boys don't do this. It's something that boys and men don't do. We don't have issues and we come together and say, and open our hearts up to each other and say, man, we're in turmoil, we're in trouble. Let's pray together. Let's encourage each other. Let's do these type of things. The best efforts we get of camaraderie is when we join a rugby team, when we get into martial arts, when we get into group projects, when we're building something or fixing something. That's where men really get together. But even in those times, we're just opening up in a very surface level because we've actually got something to do. So it's not something men really do these days, and this is why I like that particular section, because my upbringing, thank God, my upbringing is I've always had a close set of boys. Growing up in New Lynn, back in Auckland, I had a neighbour that I literally grew up with, and the boys in the neighbourhood, we just hung around together, we stayed tight, and even to this day we're still friends. In fact, I did a Skype session with one of them a couple of weeks back, and my wife, was there for a few minutes, and during that few minutes she was there listening to a Skype conversation. The next day as we're talking in the car, she says, when you're talking with these boys, you guys are different. Because we just came back from hanging around with another friend down in New South Wales, Loma, and she says, you guys talk differently, the way you discuss things and whatnot. And she says, isn't it strange that your friend pulled out a guitar and sang you a song? He sang me this Bob Marley song, and really touching. And it's a really awesome song, but there's no need to get into that. But what I'm trying to say is, boys don't really do that. And these set of boys that I have, and I even have friends now that I can actually pray with, that are solid, they talk to me straight, I can talk to them straight. And what it is a group of men and boys that can talk openly, critique each other, and knowing that we're not doing it to belittle or to feel superior or condescending or anything like that. We're doing it for the betterment of ourselves and others. And we actually try and encourage each other. And boys, if there are any young boys listening to this now, find yourself this group, or find yourself a friend that you can have this, where it's non-judgmental and you can be open with anything, and they're willing to encourage you and pull you through these things. Okay, so I'll probably spend the longest time talking about that, and that's why I love that part of the story. The third part of the story is Daniel. The prayer is answered, his thank you prayer. And he goes to the king and he interprets it. And he says to the king, this is what you dreamt. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine when he comes into the throne of the king and he says to this heathen king, this is what you dreamt, and then he goes on to explain it. You can see you can probably imagine the king's eyes just going, yeah man, that's wow. You can imagine it happening before him. It's been unraveled and everything's starting to click in. And not only does he explain the dream, he starts to interpret the dream. And now you have a contradicting statement from what happened in verse 10 and 11. There is no king that's requested that. Yes, that's true. And there is only the gods can answer this. Very true. And there is no God amongst humans. Still true. However, God has worked through a human agent to answer that question. And in fact, if you read through the story, Daniel says, King, slow down. Don't give me the appreciation. God gave me this answer. And he gives credit back to where credit is due. And so we get this huge turnaround of how God is able to uplift someone that was in the background and use him in a heathen nation for a heathen king in order for him to get the recognition that through these guys. And the fourth part I really like too is not only is Daniel promoted, but the king promotes Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah at the request of Daniel. Now, why do I like that part? Is because Daniel did not forget his boys. Daniel did not forget who helped him get to where he is. There was a support group in this network of a tight group of boys. You know, and when he was given that promotion, he knew where that came from. He knew who opened up that avenue. And because that avenue was opened up for him, it was only right for him to open up the avenue for his boys. And under his leadership, just like Joseph way back when, he is able to bless others and bring a change into a kingdom that would not have happened if, way back in point number 1, these guys had not made the admission that there's no one that can answer this question. Now that is why I love Daniel 2, and it's one of my favorite stories. In the next part of this video, I will talk about the prophecy.